Good afternoon, I'm Andy Naylor. I'm a software developer with Emerging Technologies, and I spent just over a year working with the Watson core development team on a number of different technologies, but something I'd like to tell you a little bit about today is something called Watson Discovery Advisor. But before I go any further, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background as to why we're pursuing the Watson goal. And basically we're trying to be able to answer questions, to be able to find answers to things that people want to know about. And the first part of that is, how do you actually understand the question? English is a pretty tricky language sometimes. There's a lot of vagueness and ambiguity. If you take this pretty simple sentence by all accounts, you might read it and you'd use your own experience to think, well, someone's been bitten by a dog and the policeman comes and helps them. But it's actually an equally valid interpretation of this sentence that the policeman's helping the dog to bite the victim. And in something this simple, when you have that degree of ambiguity, you have an issue with how you can actually answer the question in the first place if you don't understand what the person's asking. And interestingly, we've more or less solved this problem when we built the IBM system, Watson system for Jeopardy. The really difficult bit is how we find the answers. And this is an area which is so complex that we're still figuring out how we can use it, what we can do, and how we can tailor it for future uses. So we obviously built the IBM Watson system, which got a lot of publicity for Jeopardy. If you're not familiar, Jeopardy is a US game show. Watson needed to be able to answer questions in around 2 to 3 seconds across absolute general knowledge, massive corpus. Any number of questions could have come up, not just in any particular field. But where we took that next, after we won Jeopardy very admirably against the 2 greatest players of all time, was to actually replace the corpus with medical documents. So we took medical textbooks, journals, research trials, and we developed a system in collaboration with a number of hospitals which actually replaces the single line question that we were used to with Jeopardy with a patient's entire medical record. The question is the medical record, and the answer we're seeking in this case is a treatment plan for cancer. We built an oncology treatment advisor. But what we learned from doing this is that the doctor can't just look at this and say, oh, okay, treatment plan number 1 is ideal because Watson thinks it's got 95% confidence. The doctors needed to be able to review the evidence. They needed to understand why Watson was suggesting that, what pitfalls may exist, and also to fill in their own knowledge so they can become better doctors in future. And something which grew out of this was sometimes ultimately you don't want the singular right answer. Sometimes you already have some concept of what might be right. If you're a researcher, for instance, you have an understanding of your field and you know roughly what you're looking for, but maybe there isn't one right answer. You're instead trying to test some hypotheses. So this is what we call Discovery Advisor, and this is something which is being developed at the moment, particularly in the medical domain. And the idea being you can ask Watson a question. So what cancer therapies inhibit the FLT3 mutation? And you may already know some of these answers. Watson's not telling you anything new there. The crucial thing is it brings the evidence front and center. And why that's interesting is because, first of all, there may be documents here that you've never seen before. The medical domain is huge, and it's doubling in content size, sheer volume, over every 5 years or so. So there's an exponential growth there. And we're already at the point where individual doctors, institutions, massive bodies of specialists can't keep up with the information that's being produced. But Watson can process all of that. He can get a good idea of what's going on. So you might have some hypothesis that maybe quizartinib is a good answer for what you're going to pursue next as your research. You can add that as an answer. And Watson will go back and it will review all of the evidence that it had at its disposal, and it will show you evidence which actually supports your hypothesis, including documents you may not have seen before, documents which may refute your idea. And you can take this and you can use that, you can filter it down to understand what you're trying to accomplish and whether you're heading in the right direction with your research. We're also doing a lot of really interesting stuff around the idea of how you visualize this data. So one of the key things which Watson does is actually establish the relationships between the information, the knowledge it contains, and how you can identify gaps or relationships that you've never seen before. Finally, I just want to add that before we can even get to this stage, we have some incredibly complicated items we need to discuss, which is how we can actually get the content for different industries. This is the real challenge we're facing. and also how we train it. Once you've done these two things, the question answering follows, and we can start using this really cool stuff to be able to establish new industries. Thank you very much.